The Audit Committee meeting will begin in approximately 1 minute.
Are you ready to go? Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting of the Audit Committee Monday, March 13th, 2017 to order, and I'm filling in for Councilor Rolfing at least until he arrives. So our first order is the introduction of our new internal auditor, Jen Tano. And would you like to do that?
Sure. Jen actually started with us today, so welcoming her in true fashion here. She came from Lutheran Social Services, and we'll just let her give a brief statement.
Hi, I'm Jen Tano. I came from Lutheran Social Services. I was the Director of Accounting there, and I'm very excited to work here for you guys.
Well, Jen, welcome. We're very glad to have you, and also would like to congratulate Ashley and Aaron on their upcoming wedding here too. So, a lot of nice announcements to make this afternoon. So, welcome, Jen, and congratulations, Ashley and Aaron. Okay, next item is our approval of minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And notice the meeting, it was for the minutes of the meeting of January 11, 2017. Okay, now we're moving up to number 4, reports and updates, review, follow-up to fuel control audit report.
And Ashley will be giving this report, so we will turn it over to her.
Okay. So The purpose and objectives of the fuel audit were to follow up on the status of prior audit recommendations and to determine if there were opportunities for improvement and determine if outside agencies are billed properly. A little bit on the background. The City of Sioux Falls purchases fuel to operate its own vehicles and equipment, and they also sell fuel to the school, the county, and a few other agencies. The fuel operations are managed by the Fleet Division. They have 4 fuel stations throughout the city, and they also have 2 bulk trucks, which they use to transport fuel from the fueling site to vehicles in the field. To access the fuel, 2 cards must be swiped, one for the vehicle and one for the operator. The Fleet Department uses HTE and Phoenix to track fuel purchased and dispensed. And as of December 1st, 2016, the Fleet Department implemented a new software system called AssetWorks, and that's replacing the old HTE system. And then they also use Veeder-Root to monitor fuel tank inventory levels. On page 3, the city reports fuel purchases and costs in the Fleet Revolving Fund. All city departments and external entities are charged for the cost of fuel used plus a 6% markup fee to cover some of the operating costs. The chart shows total fuel purchased, total markup fee revenue collected, and total gallons sold for the last 3 years. On page 4, our audit period covered activities and transactions that occurred from January 1 to September 30th. For the results of the audit, we determined that the Fleet Department implemented 1 of the 3 prior audit recommendations from the 2011 report. The 2 recommendations that they did not follow up on resulted in finding 1 and finding 2. For audit finding 1, we determined that a proper fuel inventory reconciliation is not completed on a monthly basis. This resulted in audit recommendation 1 and also in those 2 adjusting journal entries that are shown on page 4. The first entry was to decrease fuel inventory due to an error that went unnoticed in 2014. And the second entry was made to decrease fuel inventory to agree with the amount shown on the subledger. For audit finding 2, we noted that the fuel card system database needed multiple updates and corrections. This resulted in audit recommendation 2. However, towards the completion of our audit fieldwork, the IT department and fleet began a thorough review of the database and cleaned up the system so that they could implement their new software. And this was done in December. For fuel bid compliance, which was a prior audit recommendation as well, we determined that fuel bids are now compliant with state law. Under leading practices, we noted that the Fleet Department charges a markup of 6% to all its fuel customers. However, using a percent markup is not the best practice and is not recommended because it doesn't consider fluctuating fuel prices, and that could cause the fleet fund to be over or underfunded. This resulted in audit recommendation 3. We also noted 3 different opportunities for improvement that the Fleet Department may want to consider in order to make the fuel operations more efficient. For the last item, we reviewed a sample of outside agency billings and determined that the agencies were properly billed each month for the amount of city fuel they used. And then for our 3 audit recommendations, the first one, we recommended that a fuel inventory reconciliation be completed and documented each month, and any significant overages or shortages be thoroughly reviewed by the appropriate personnel. Management agreed, and they implemented this at year-end, December 31, 2016. For the second recommendation, we recommended that fleet management establish adequate controls to ensure fuel card database is accurate and up-to-date. This includes ensuring there's a formal policy in place over the administration of employee and vehicle fuel cards. Management agreed with the recommendation, and the date of expected implementation was February 1st of 2017. For the third one, We recommended that fleet management conduct an analysis to determine the cost of managing and maintaining fuel operations and develop a fixed markup fee that reflects these costs. City departments and external entities should be charged this markup based on forecasted use. Management agreed, and the markup fee was set to 10 cents per gallon on February 1st. And then in conclusion, I would like to thank Fleet and Finance Management and staff for their assistance during this audit. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions of Ashley? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to have a motion to accept and submit to City Council.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, now under reports, our next report is an update on external audit of cities' 2016 financial statements.
Yes, I had just asked for a status update from the external auditors, and Brian Savinger gave me a brief overview that it looks like everything is on track. They were out in February, completed the federal compliance testing, and that's currently being reviewed. They got a start on a significant amount of the financial statement audit in February, which was also being completed, I believe, last week, and will be internally reviewed by IDE. Right, city staff will be working on the CAFR. That's due to IDE Bailey March 31st. And it looks like everything's on track for the on-site work with Metro Communications and the audit with the Housing and Redevelopment Commission as well. So going forward, again, the CAFR will be prepared by city staff and to IDE Bailey by the end of the month. IDE Bailey will review that for approximately 2 weeks and hopes to issue that April 28th and present to Audit Committee at our May or June meeting whenever we get that scheduled. So things are looking good there, and I believe we do have management here from Finance if anyone has any questions on that.
Okay, any questions of Kim or anybody from Finance? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next report, and that is the review of the 2017 Annual Audit Plan.
All right, and we usually start that off with looking at what we call our audit universe. So I'll have Ashley put that up on the overhead for those viewing. And basically that breaks down the audits we've completed between 2010 and now and plan to complete this year. Sorry, I'll let her catch up. Down the left-hand column, we just break that down by MOU or division. I think they are ranked in order of expenditures. And then you'll see kind of the coverage. It's just a nice overview of the coverage for the last few years here. We do try to hit the areas with more of the expenditures and or revenue, but we also take a lot of consideration to management requests and requests from elected officials. We typically send out an email to the directors, to the mayor, and to all the elected officials in the fall, which Rich did prior to his retirement, and we've included those items that we got back for consideration into this year's plan as well. And then moving on to the 2017 audit plan. Have kind of changed the format on this for this year. This format kind of shows the audit title, the department, and then the preliminary objective in an easy to read, concise format for the year. And just going through these, the ambulance service contract was a management request. We have that one pretty well completed, as this audit plan is actually being presented a little bit later in the year than we would have hoped due to the turnover in the office. But what we looked at there is we worked with Jill Franken and Julie Charbonneau to review how the city ensures compliance with the ambulance agreement. And like I said, that one's, we're looking to present that at our May or June meeting as well. And then we are going to take a look at maintenance of administrative instructions citywide. So taking a look at the city as a whole and how each department is documenting policies and procedures. We feel like it will be useful going forward. We can expand on it a little more so that we get our procedures documented in writing to allow for better succession planning, and it will assist in future auditing. So we have documented procedures to audit against.
Kim, if you don't mind, can you just pull the mic a little closer?
Certainly. And then we're going to look at fee waivers citywide as well to see how much money is waived each year and how those decisions are made. Kind of looking at consistency in this process across different divisions of the city where it can be consistent, and ensuring that proper approvals are occurring to prevent improper write-offs. And the water utility management audit was actually requested by elected officials. With that audit, we will take a look at how the water utility rates are set, whether the city is following best practices for rate setting and administration to ensure that we're able to respond to the current and the future needs of the city. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Septage hauler rates was an audit that was requested by Public Works. They'd like us to take a look at the rates to ensure that they're equitable to all users while still covering the cost of service, and then look at comparing those rates to other cities of comparable sizes. And then a few resource audits here. We're going to look at cash handling for the Sioux Falls Area Humane Society, which was also a management request, just looking to see if they have proper internal controls over the money they receive on behalf of the city. Going to look at preventative maintenance as a whole. Facilities management does a great job with that, but we're going to look to see what the process is in performing routine maintenance to lengthen the life of our larger assets, vehicles, buildings, things like that, and the process involved in determining the timing of replacement of those. Motor vehicle revenue is pretty straightforward as well. Testing to see whether we're receiving the right revenue from the state. So we'll get into that. And then we do have our typical analysis and follow-up. Yearly we do a follow-up of audit recommendations, our fraud risk analysis, and our financial condition analysis. And then we build in room to our audit plan as well to handle special requests, and then continuing education and those other items that will come up, as well as ongoing auditing that we do. We did have 2 carryover audits from 2016. Going to look at accounts payable to review internal controls, which will make sure that payments are made properly and timely, and that we are properly maintaining our master vendor file and reducing the likelihood of duplicate payments. And then we're currently also working on cable franchise fees, which is similar to the motor vehicle revenue. It's revenue that comes into the city that we were asked to look at to make sure that the fees are being calculated properly. With the cable franchise fees, I believe we receive approximately $800,000 in revenue. And that one will also be wrapped up and presented at our next meeting. So we have a good start to the plan. The one I didn't touch on here, public information requests. I think we have a little discussion on that, and Attorney Fifley is here as well. As you know, the audit plan is in draft format right now. It's been brought to our attention that this might not be something that we can tackle because our public information requests right now are facilitated via our website, and there's really no way to track those. They looked today for me, and 2016 alone, we got 1.5 million hits on the website. People are so sufficient in gaining their own knowledge and going out there and getting that. So that might be one as a committee that we need to discuss and take a different approach or fill in that with a different request. So welcome to input on that, as well as any other items.
Okay. First of all, before we get to number 5, any questions about any other aspect of the 2017 audit plan? And nice formatting job, by the way. Councilor
If I might,
Urkenbach.
Mr. Chair, I did receive a call from our illustrious chair who was looking at the wrong clock, and he apologizes. He is on his way. Okay. I texted him and said, "Are you okay?" And he texted back and said, "Why?" And then he calls and said, "Oh gosh, I'm really sorry." So just so you know, he's
Okay.
coming.
All
So we
right.
need to give him appropriate rations of.
A victim of spring ahead?
So
Okay,
anyway.
all right. Any other questions then regarding the audit plan? Mr. Martins?
I just have one. I noticed on, the universe coverage, I mean, there's some items on there that haven't been looked at in this whole time span, but they weren't chosen. And can you just generally address how you pick some of these and left some of these off?
Right. Like I mentioned earlier, we do give a lot of emphasis to those items that management and/or elected officials request. And there's always going to be some divisions where it doesn't necessarily make sense to do an audit either based on revenue and expenditures or based on risk. If we don't identify a risk or an area for improvement. So there may be some that we never audit. We kind of try to touch on everything, but we are only an office of 3, so that plays into it as well.
Okay, and Councilor Urkenbach?
So along that same line then, Kim, I mean, let's have that conversation about public information requests, but if we choose that we're not going to do that, I would look then at, that would be my question. I had the same question that Mr. Martins did in terms of public parking facilities. Yep. Appears to have never been audited. Maybe this is the time, especially given that it's on the council's sort of front burner right now. It might be might be valid this year if we needed a replacement for that, number 5.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? And I will invite Attorney Dave Feifley to address the committee. Welcome, Mr. Feifley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Feifley with the City Attorney's Office. Appreciate this chance to address you today. Kim Schroeder was accurate as far as the 1.5 million hits that the city website has on an annual basis. To give the council and the public a little more background, certainly with the advent of the information age, the city has been attempting to provide, frankly, tens of thousands of pages of documents and information to the public via siouxfalls.org. On a monthly basis, we are now getting 124,300 hits using that site on a monthly basis alone. In talking with Kim, I know they're looking for some data as far as quantifying exactly what's going on, timeliness of responses, et cetera, and I would submit to you, due to the 1.5 million hits we're getting on an annual basis, that's pretty hard to break down and quantify it further. There are some CRMs that we use. Those are kind of the old system of tracking email requests to the various city departments. We can do that by department. However, we can't break them down further in terms of, is it a request for specific information? Is it a request for a specific document, et cetera? That data is not available. My office is involved in a record request when there might be a denial or a partial denial of a request. By state law, records are presumed open for copying and inspection unless a specific state statute says that it's a confidential document. I can count on one hand in my 7 years here where we've done a denial or a partial denial that I personally have been involved with. And I have 2 other attorneys in the office. In fact, one of them wrote the public record statutes for the state of South Dakota. She has done only a handful while she has been here in her number of years with the city as well. So in terms of auditing record requests and responses, I think you would find that it's done very informally where city employees are simply responding to those requests in a very timely manner. We don't track it if they are simply responding to them. We are only contacted as an office if there happens to be a denial, and those are very few and far between. So I hope in terms of formulating your auditing plan, that gives you a little more information to determine if this is a worthwhile endeavor.
Any questions for Attorney Fifley from the committee? Councilor Neitzer.
So if somebody, let's say, delivers a letter to the Director of Planning and says, pursuant to an open records request, I would like XYZ, you would not be contacted unless they thought that there might be some sort of a reason not to deliver it? Otherwise, they would just deliver it and that would be the end of it?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know if any of this is kept? I mean, and I suppose a lot of people probably aren't as formal as to write pursuant to an open records request. They might just say, I'd like to get this information.
There's two types of requests, Counselor. There's an informal request that's done over the phone, or you even see someone on the street or in passing at the grocery store, and they'll say, hey, can you get me a copy of such and such? Sure, no problem. Formal record request is something in writing or via an email, and you're right. They don't usually use all the magic language, but we treat those as a formal request. By law, the city would have 10 working days to respond to that request, and the only time our office ever hears about them is if that department has a specific question saying, can we give this out or not? Otherwise, they simply give it out, satisfying the request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Attorney Fifley from the committee? Councilor Erpenbach.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling to frame it, so I apologize. I'm just thinking about maybe in general what we're looking for. I mean, it's not something that this team needs to do. Internal auditors don't need to be involved with the analytics on that website, but it isn't that difficult to set up, Google Analytics to really do a deeper dive into where did this person come from and where did they end up and did they call us? I mean, that may be, I don't know what the original intent was behind the request, but that may be all that it is. And so I guess that would be my suggestion, because it's kind of what I do the rest of the time that I'm not here, is to deal with things like that. And so that would be my suggestion. I really do think, if it were 10 years ago and we were talking about, really standard, as Councilor Neitzer said, those very formal Freedom of Information Act requests, that'd be a different deal. And we get one or two of those. I've maybe seen one in the 7 years I've been there was technically a Freedom of Information Act request. I just think it would be my feeling as an individual on this group that we take that one off the list, that we maybe suggest to staff that some Google Analytics would be really awesome, and let's move on and do some things that this team is really better prepared to handle. Again, just me.
Do you want to make a motion?
I would certainly do that. I would move that we remove the public information requests from the list.
A second? Seconded by Mr. Martins. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Yes.
Then question about to our internal audit team, do you need something to be added to the list?
I would be apt to maybe leaving that open at this point until we see how much training it's going to take to get Jen onboarded and going for the year. And then, like you said, maybe fill in with the public parking idea.
Okay.
At some point in the year. Because again, we do, with our audit plan, it is always subject to change or amendment by the committee, so.
Okay.
And there will probably be, if I could, there'll probably be some other requests during the year that will come in. That's on. That will come in that we'll be able to fill that
Right.
that blank.
I don't think we ever have a problem filling, so I think that would be the approach at this point.
And I think that's prudent. We could then amend if we wish at a later date. Okay, so we have an amended motion now. And let's vote on the amended motion so we can submit this to City Council for approval. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it carries unanimously. All right, we're moving on to topic number 5, continuing education and training, something that I think is extremely important and I support 100% for our employees. Who's taking this one? Kim?
I can briefly discuss them. Item A is a local training hosted by the Institute of Internal Auditors, the Sioux Falls chapter, which I'm proud to be a member of and the treasurer for. So that'll be a 2-day conference held here in town. Unfortunately, Ashley's going to be out of the country and can't go, so we're requesting that Jen and I attend that. It's day 1 will talk on performance auditing, and day 2 is interactions for positive change, saying it right when the stakes are high. So I think the speaker that they're bringing in will be very beneficial. And that one is approximate cost of $300 each to attend, so very low cost. Continuing education. Item B is an opportunity that was provided to me through the Institute of Internal Auditors. There's actually no cost to the city for me to attend this. It will be paid for by the IIA, so I'm just asking for permission to spend my time in Orlando learning. Item C is our annual conference with the Association of Local Government Auditors, this year held in Atlanta, Georgia, and requesting permission for Ashley and I to attend that again this year. Always a good conference, always a good networking experience, and that one would be, for the both of us to go, about $3,500, which we've budgeted for.
Okay, any questions? Any questions of Kim from the committee regarding these opportunities for continuing education? Councilor Erpenbach.
Question about item B, how is it that it is no cost to the city? Is it some special perk for you, or how's that working?
Since I'm an officer for the local chapter of the Institute of Internal Auditors, they will pay my travel and conference registration.
Wonderful,
So,
that's great, that's a great opportunity, super.
That is a great opportunity. And at $4,100, I imagine that for all of these, we have that in our budget. And so there's not an issue there. Any other questions of Kim on these topics?
I would move approval of the continuing education.
I don't believe we need to make a motion on this one.
I don't believe so.
Other than that, we're all in favor of it. So, okay, so we're moving on to the open discussion.
And real quick,
yes.
on item 2C, if we could back up a moment, I got the motion to remove that particular item from the audit plan, but I didn't catch the motion to submit as amended.
Yes, we did vote on that.
We voted, but did we make a motion, is what he's saying?
The first and second.
We voted on the amendment, and then we voted on the amended proposal, or the proposal as amended.
Right, I just missed the person who made the
motion
as to submit as amended.
Mr. Martins, did you make that motion?
Or we could just redo it.
I think I did.
Councilor Rolfing. We can watch the tape later and verify.
I would be
If
happy
not,
to
I
second
did.
it. I don't believe that anyone did, actually, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I made the motion. Oh, listen to him.
Okay,
I made
Councilor
the motion.
Erpenbach made the motion, and Mr. Martins seconded.
I guess what I'm saying is that was to remove
That
the
was-
item. And
that was
so
removing the item.
motion to submit the plan as amended.
Never
Oh,
happened.
did we not have,
We did a vote, but we didn't have a motion and a second.
all right.
Now you do.
We
Again,
went
I
a
would
little-
be happy to
Now we
make
do.
that motion.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I was the only one who got messed up on that stuff.
Hey, Mr. Tardy guy. Okay, open discussion time. I have one. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Rolfing.
Apologize, I will just tell you flat out, I'm a victim of daylight saving time.
Yep.
I was looking at the wrong clock, and all of a sudden, I was coming down here at 3 o'clock, and it was really 4. I got into my car and said, oh my gosh, nobody's on, something's wrong. So I apologize to the entire group, my sincere apologies.
In the last 2 days, I would imagine you're probably not the first to have been victimized by spring ahead as well. Okay, any other open discussion items?
I'll just mention that our next meeting will be sometime in May or early June. We'll coordinate that with Ide Bailey so they can do their presentation of the annual audit.
Okay, very good. And I have one. This is Kim's first meeting as our internal audit manager. So I would like to congratulate her on a job well done for the meeting and the time that preceded it and for meetings in the future. So again, congratulations, Kim. Any other comments or open discussion? This meeting is adjourned.